To start off with a couple federal policies and how that impacts the market, along with a couple things to make you sound really smart to your clients. One of the biggest things that has come out recently is an update on the GDP. GDP again stands for gross domestic product. And if you think about it like your household, it is the income that your household would make. And in this graph, what you are trying to see is the GDP or the household income that you have goes up at about 2 to 3% a year. That's a pretty good range, and that's about where we've run in the United States over the long term. And if you look at where we were in 2024, the pink line, we were at about a 2.8% growth line.
Which is right where the government wants us to be.
The data that has just come out for this year, and we're going to talk more about this and the impact that that has, is that it has fallen to about half. It is updated to about 1.4%, which means the economy is still growing, but it is growing slower. Also, one of the other key numbers that the government looks at, and that of course is one of the leading indicators for real estate sales, is the unemployment rate, right? How many people don't have jobs? The goal on this to be balanced is that it should be again around 4%. And you see at 2024, last year, it was right at 4%. You see it spiked right after the Great Recession. It spiked in COVID. And this year, the data just came out that that number has gone up. That's, again, also a slightly concerning statistic.
Bob, let me also say that I just read from the Houston Workforce Commission that Houston's unemployment is also sitting at 4.5. We are the highest in the state. So that is also concerning for what our market may look like this fall.
Absolutely. The other data, again, inflation rate. This is, again, a big predictor of what comes with mortgage rates and what the government looks for. Inflation, you want to be around 2%. That's the government's target, which is the dotted pink line. And that's about where we ran from about the mid 90s through a little bit before COVID. It spiked in COVID as the government gave away trillions and trillions of dollars. And the reason that mortgage rates are higher is because, right, that has not come down and not come down very quickly, but it has been coming down a bit since over the last kind of 3 years. The most worrying stat is that in the last month, maybe tariff related, maybe not, economists are split, is that that rate seems to be going back up. And what that has done is when you look at mortgage rates, since about mid 2022 is they've been relatively consistent in the grand scheme of things in the mid sixes, right? Spike a little, go down a little, but they've been, again, relatively consistent, which is much different than the COVID years and much different than any time since the Great Recession.
Well, and the Fed's been talking, right, about the potential of reducing the rate. But if unemployment is up, GDP is not growing like it needs to grow, and inflation is up, it makes it really hard for them to adjust the cost of money.
And the reason, again, some of this is technical and some of this is nerdy, but it gives you the ability to be a better realtor because you understand the trends that are going on in the economy, and it gives you that ability to have depth on your upcoming predictions. This is also one of the most fascinating data sets. Again, when you look at home sales on an annual basis, last year and the year before, we sold about 4.1 million homes nationwide. This year, it's projected about the same, at about 4.2. And again, when people are like, oh my gosh, real estating is hard, right? You're exactly right. As if you got into the real estate game at any point since 2011, you are selling less homes now as an industry than we have at any year since then, right? The only times that we sold less homes than this was during the midst of the Great Recession or prior to 1996.
And here's the silver lining. For those of you on this call that have just gotten into the business in the last 2 years, 3 years, this is a normal market for you. This is what you know. And so if you can make it through and learn the skills that you have to have in this market, which are different than the skills that you had to have in the COVID good years, you're going to set yourself up for a great career. The thing that I want to point out specifically on this slide that is so important, if you trace this slide back to 08, 09, 2010, 2011, you see that those numbers kind of bump around in the fours. If you fast forward and look at 23, 24, 25, we're still bumping around in the fours. So for your sellers who say, well, I will wait for next year for it to be better, if we are mirroring the trend line from the Great Recession and you layer that over, and again, I don't have a crystal ball, But if I did, and I'm looking at trends, I think there's a conversation that you need to be having with your sellers who may be struggling with where they are feeling the market is and understanding the reality of what this market looks like.
Said succinctly, we do not expect 25 or 26 to look much different slash better than how we've been the last few years.
Gary specifically said that we're still in this for probably a year and a half.
Here is one of the also the more interesting graphs. There's lots of numbers and there's lots of things, but the meat of it is that in the long term, home prices rise by about 4%. And just like anything else, stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency, things get way out of whack high, everybody gets depressed, but ultimately over the long term, they follow the line. If you look over the last couple years, basically since COVID, home prices have been above the long-term trend line. Not anything like what they were before the Great Recession, but they've been above the long-term trend line. And for some people, right, some of your clients, they're like, oh, I can't wait for the market to crash because I'm going to get a great deal. Right? I'm going to get 20% off a house. This data and this trend line and fundamentally this philosophy shows that prices are moving closer to the trend line, but they're not crashing. Right? They've gotten a little bit closer to the trend line than last year as inflation eats in, but there is no prediction here that prices are going to crash, again, nationwide basis, to support somebody getting phenomenal deals.
Yeah. Are prices inflated? Yes. Based on this data, they're about 8.3% inflated. That's very different than the Great Recession lead up, which was 20% inflated.
Again, really good to know. And what all of that means for your average home buyer, especially first-time home buyers, is now is the second least affordable it has ever been to buy a home since the 1970s.
That's tough, guys. That's a really tough stat. And some of you were feeling that with your buyers of why buyers are not making some choices. It's because it's expensive.
And when things are expensive, people feel very uncomfortable. And this, again, is one of the new sets of information that he brought out that we thought was absolutely fascinating and we wanted to share.
And this is, guys, sorry to interrupt, Bob. This is the first time we have heard this specific stat, and I think it's super critical that you get this.
And again, I'm going to tie it back. The feeling that people have is that things are expensive, the economy is slowing, things still getting more expensive, and oh, by the way, I can't afford a house, or right? I can't afford all of my living expenses. And so what do they want from their real estate agent, mortgage broker, or insurance agent? Is they want to be comforted.
Right? They don't want you to come in and tell them a practical conversation. They need and want to have some emotional conversations along this journey because they feel very uncertain and they want somebody to give them and wrap them up in a real big, nice, warm hug because they haven't had that.
And that is a huge difference of what we have been seeing this year of agents who have been more successful is those that are providing comfort versus those that are not have had huge strides and gains this year.
I want to give a quick story on that because I think it's also poignant. I was chatting with one of our agents, Violet, who was going on an appointment, and she said, to speak to Gary's point of this is all about mindset, her mindset when she went to that meeting was not, how can I get them as a client? Her mindset was, how can I help them? And in helping them, maybe they don't become clients of mine. And she said when she had that mindset of how can I help these people, she was able to be more present. She could actively listen, and then they could get to the path that actually worked for both parties to move forward.
Huge. It's hugely impactful. And so again, if you break all these things down into the points that you want to remember, is that inflation and unemployment are both going up. The problem with them both going up is that the government can only fix one, and the way they fix one harms the other. So if they want to fix unemployment, which is what you hear from the White House, inflation goes up. And so that trade-off is a very difficult one for the government to try to navigate.
Do they ever balance it well, Bob?
Typically, the government overshoots.
Okay, fair enough.
Typically, they overshoot. One of the biggest concerns, and again, one of the things that we're watching for month after month is what is happening to the gross domestic product, or again, the economic growth. It should be, again, in the 2 to 3% range. The new data that just came out said it had dropped to about half of where we were last year. That again is concerning and ties into the unemployment concern.
Bob, the other stat that I heard was that groceries, fresh vegetables, fruits and vegetables at the grocery store are up 34%. That's significant.
It
So
is significant.
the only way we fix this is we all go to Hobby Lobby and buy all the Christmas shit that's coming out in September. That's what's going to change it. We got to start spending money.
So, well, and that's what the government wants, which is why you're hearing from the White House that they want the Fed to lower interest rates so people will go spend more money because money will be cheaper.
Right.
The difficulty when the government may do that is that creates inflation. And again, you can't have too much inflation because that's what happens in places like Argentina. What we are seeing as a trend line is that home prices are coming down, right, closer to the long-term average, but it's at slow rates. Again, not a crash. The expectation for the next 1 to 2 years is that it will be very similar to the last couple years. And what that means is that there is enough room for anyone in the real estate game. There is not enough room for everyone. And the thing that we are seeing that is separating successful agents from not are those agents that are providing comfort. And comfort, Paige, is being present, asking questions, listening, not immediately jumping in and telling them things that you think that they need to hear, but they don't want to.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so what does that mean for Houston and how does that impact what's coming in the market? Again, the most recent data that just came out for HAR, came out this last week, said that for the month of July, single family home sales are up 9% over last year.
Which, y'all, normally we would be all over this and be like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic news. Things are on the rise. But remember, we compared July to this year to July last year. And remember what happened last July? We had a hurricane.
So there's an impact. There are realtors out there that are like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. We're back. It's going to be great. Just remember, you as the smart realtor understand the basics of the data and can put it in context.
That's right.
Here is also one of the things that has driven sales growth is that we have seen the largest year over year single family home price decline since 2023, right? The median home price in Houston, July to last July, is down 3%.
Right?
Yeah.
Not falling off a cliff, but it is an opportunity for people who want to get in and take advantage of the market.
And just like we talked about in the story at last presentation, right? Home builders like Lennar have cut prices, in some cases by 15 to 20% when you wrap everything in, and they're selling more homes. And so you do have sellers that are cutting prices, and that drives volume.
That's
That
right.
is a big thing to know. In HAR, we have the highest number of listings for a July ever in history, right? Houston's gotten bigger, there's more listings, but there is a 39% inventory increase over last year. That is a huge number. Again, we're going to talk through some of that in just a second and the implications and what that means for your clients. The days on market for single family homes have increased by 11% compared to last July. And also when you look at the townhome or condo market, prices, the number of sales is up a little bit, 0.4%, and also the median price is down. Again, as you remember, the activity set is inventory rises, days on market rise, price reductions rise, prices fall. That's the volume and the cycle that we go through every single time. And where we are now in the cycle is we are starting to see prices decline, and that is helping to drive sales volume up.
Right.
When you look at that, again, on the broad inventory level, and again, for most people, this simple graph is going to be most helpful. We're in a balanced market, right? 5 to 6 months of inventory is a balanced market. Paige, you want to explain what a balanced market is?
Balanced market is really 4 to 6 months of inventory. That means that it's kind of a tug of war between who wins. And in the balanced market, sellers are typically a little more reluctant to give because they are holding on to the image that they have in their mind of what the previous home sale a year ago happened in their neighborhood. Buyers are also then, when we're kind of in this position, are like, look, buddy, I'm not doing it. I don't have to because there's a house down the street that I'll go buy instead. So it is a very uncomfortable time, and you feel the rub when you're working in this market.
And for most agents, again, any agents that gotten into the business in the last 9 years, all they've known is a seller's market. And so this is new territory. So for people on the other side of your transactions, they are having to learn new skills that they haven't had to learn in the last 8 to 9 years. This is also one of my most favorite and fascinating slides. We again have all this on our website under the trends section, but here are a few things to know for you and also for your buyers and sellers. When you look at the seasonality, right? January, February, March, April, things looked very, very similar to how they did last year because this shows again month by month compared to the last few years. In May, we outperformed how we did the last 2 years. So you're like, this is good. And if you remember, interest rates were down a little bit around that period of time.
Yes, but also remember in May, we had a derecho last year. So we had a May derecho and a July hurricane. And typically the month after each of those incidents, it takes us about 2 months for the real estate market to recover. So when we start looking at these stats, they are misleading to what actually you all are feeling in the market.
And I think you can see that best in the June and July stats, right? June looks quite a bit better than last year. But again, you compare it to 2023, again, as we've been tracking similarly for the last 2 years, it's pretty similar, right? Taking out the weather event, same thing in July, right? We had consistent weather events. We're a little bit better, looked a little bit more like 2022, but very different than 2022 and 2021 over the long term.
Right.
That's the seasonality you want to watch for. And ultimately, this is data that helps you predict for your buyers and sellers what's likely really going on because you're comparing month over month and giving them context of what that looks like.
That's right. Said a different way, if you're following this graph and you're trying to advise your sellers or buyers what the market's going to look like in September, you can look back at the beginning of the year and say, we've largely tracked the same as 2024. And so let's assume that that's the market that we're going to be in.
Very helpful. Okay, so now let's get to the meat of it. So we brought out 6 things for you from behind closed doors from Gary Keller and the top team's private mastermind.
And I'm going to tell you that none of this is about market data and stats. All of this is going to be generated. What Gary says is when we're sitting in that room, that we're all sitting there and nobody's feeling great about their business, guys. I mean, because when we're used to COVID years and you're here, you're doing the best that you can and you're working hard. And so we're like, hey, Gary, how do we get through this? And Gary goes, I've been through these cycles 5 times, and it's all about your mindset. And what's new and different, it's also going to be all about AI moving forward.
And so here's one of the things. This should not be surprising, but it is on the habit, right? Clients look you up before a meeting and they form opinion and judgment of you before you walk in the room based on what the first page of Google. And now, at a growth rate of hundreds of thousands of people a day, they ask you, AI, what your reputation is online. Here's the part that's new on this, again, because this is growing at rates of hundreds of thousands of people a day. And this is part of, we have 5 win before you arrive steps, right? Before you walk into a client room. This is our first step, and it is something that we have been working on diligently since the conference for everyone as the first step. In the old days, what many people would do is they'd either not look at their profile or they'd have outdated profiles at different places like Realtor or Zillow or somewhere else, or they would get one bio and they would put that same bio everywhere. In the new world for AI, the reason that that is problematic is because Google doesn't like duplicate content. And so when you come up at the time, it kind of doesn't value those. And 2, AI is looking for similar themes and reputational features. And so what that means is that it is now more than ever, it is important to understand and ask AI, right? What is it looking for in the profile when it gives you your reputation? What is your reputation? How do you write your bio? And then how does it tweak your bio of every place that it could go on the internet?
So every place is a little bit different, but it contains the same concepts and themes and values.
And so your big takeaway here is 1, right, Google yourself and look it up. 2, click all the links. But 3, you need a great bio with your unique selling proposition throughout all of your items, but it shouldn't just be a copy and paste. That was new, and that's something that we're actively working on at the Houston Properties team. Number 2, there is enough for anyone, but not enough for everyone. The question is right, what side are you going to be on? And so this ultimately is getting to is, If you want an unfair share in this market, you're going to have to go do something different than the average agent. And that consistent differentiator is the amount of time that you are spending on lead generation, right? In our discussion with a lot of people, the expectation is that a lot of tenured agents are getting out of the business. And the reason they're getting out of the business is because there's a level of exhaustion from COVID and changes and lawsuits and activity, and they just don't want to do the work. And the good news for new agents and the good news for hungry agents is this is the time in the market cycle where you have the opportunity to pick up market share.
Yeah, I would say my favorite times, especially as newer agents, oftentimes you're going to find that you're working with more buyers potentially than sellers. And this is a great opportunity for the buyers because you're in a position where you're actually going to be able to negotiate and have some big wins for them. And it's your chance to build your arsenal so that when the market takes off again, you're in that catbird seat. So doing the work now is helping your future self, right? That's the real thing that you want to make sure that you're understanding.
And here's the fun one though. If you're like, oh, Bob, oh, Paige, I work 7 days a week, I work 12 hours a day, you've got to be prepared for this, which is you're not overwhelmed. You're just overcommitted to things that don't matter. And again, I was probably the biggest one. I was in this trap, especially when I was younger. So I'm like, oh, I'm working 12-hour days. Oh, I'm not taking a vacation. Oh, I'm running around all the time. I feel important because I am busy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who took a conference call on our wedding day. Okay, so he can really speak to this
I
situation.
have lived this. And again, here's a little bit of data. I pulled this from our team. Again, I think the numbers are very similar. On a per hour rate basis, for one of our agents that is meeting with $1 million plus client, they are earning about $2,000 an hour. Okay, I'm going to say that again.
That's a great income. Yeah, that's
Right in the time where you are at an appointment with a client over $1 million opportunity, even if you don't win it, again, this is the average stats, you're earning about $2,000 an hour. So that's about a $4,000 meeting.
That's
It's huge.
fantastic. And that's what a senior partner at a law firm would make. So you are on par with other professionals.
If you are doing showings, typically after the third time, so it's not the first or second showing, but you're showing the eighth house, the 20th house, you're making about $50 an hour. If you are doing sign installs, he doesn't do this anymore, but if you're doing sign installs, you're about $30 an hour. And if you were doing admin work, paperwork updates, drafting, etc., you're about $5 to $8 an hour.
And the reason why those numbers change so dramatically is because when you choose to be nothing more than functional, you get paid for a functional job, right? The reason why showings your per hour goes down the more you show, it is because you didn't take the time to have the committed conversation with your client to find out where they are and where you can help them go. Right? So if you're going to get paid the big bucks, which is great, you got to do the big things.
And here's the easiest way to do it. Again, daily habit. Daily habit. I ask myself every day, and I make myself journal it. What is the number one thing that I need to do today? Right? What is the number one thing I need to do today to give myself leverage? Next one is a fun one. Don't waste time on non-buyer buyers, and don't waste time on non-seller sellers.
What's a,
Paige,
what's a non-buyer buyer?
Paige, what's a non-buyer buyer?
A non-buyer buyer is a buyer who doesn't buy and has no intention of buying. They just sort of want to talk about it, think about it, and let you buy them lunches and coffees and hang out with you because you're a really cool person and you're a nice person, but they don't want to buy.
And Paige, what are some good questions, or what is a simple framework to be able to identify non-buyer buyers compared to real buyers?
I think you want to work through question trees, right? When we first met, you said it was important that you purchased a home by August. It's July. What's changed?
And what answer are you looking for to tell that they're a non-buyer buyer?
The answer that I would be looking for is, again, non-committal responses, or a pushback against fundamentals, right? Well, I really don't want to get pre-approved. Well, why don't you want to get pre-approved? Well, I don't want people to hit my credit. Why is that important? Well, because I feel like blah, 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 blah. So you've got to figure out where they're coming from and understand that to identify people who want to ride around in your car because you're cool versus people who really have business to do and they want your assistance?
Next one's also a fun one, especially in hard markets, both where we are and where we expect to be for at least the next 24 months. It is more important than ever to avoid energy vampires. And here's a really easy litmus test to tell if it's an energy vampire, right? If you can, when I ask you these questions, if there's anybody that comes into your mind, it's an energy vampire. Is there anybody in your mind that loves to gossip and consistently complain? Is there anyone in your life that loves to have conflict, right? They always seem to have conflict with whatever they're going through, their dry cleaner, at a restaurant, people they work with, whatever it is. Or three, do they have an excuse of why they weren't able to get something done? And that excuse is typically related to what somebody else did or said. It
Boy,
is,
Bob, it sounds like you just described the news for me. I guess I need to turn that off.
yeah,
The media,
yeah.
perhaps.
It's a big one. And in this case, to protect your habit, this was a great discussion around the room. It is more important on what and who you remove than on what you do. Next one, maintain habits that give you the energy to be successful and surround yourself with top quality people. So example on this is one of our agents, Aaron, started a phenomenal group, Win the Morning, Win the Day, comes out of a great book. And there's 6 things to do that allow somebody to win the morning. In this accountability group, we've got about half our team, and you just drop the number 6 in when you're done, or maybe a little picture. And one of the most exciting things from this just simple habit, and the habits are right, hydrate, meditate, exercise, gratitude practice, goal setting, right, your number one thing, and then a healthy breakfast, is that from that, one of our team members has lost 20 pounds because of the consistent activities and exercise. Even more powerful, her sister watched what she was doing and then started picking up the same habits. So, right, people watch you. And so if you are maintaining healthy habits that allow you to be successful and you surround yourself with people who have your vision of the future, you're going to be successful.
Well, and again, this goes back to that theme that we started with. What Gary said is this game is all about your mindset, 100%.
And the last one, right? AI won't replace agents, but agents that don't use AI will be replaced. Now, this is our favorite. Like we are adding something new on AI every single week. The efficiency that AI is providing for agents is absolutely enormous. And the activity to use it on lead generation is, we believe it runs to a winner take all game in the next couple of years. The questions I think that you ought to be asking yourself here are 3 things. One, what is the most mundane part of your job? 2, what is the data set that you are using to make decisions around that mundane part of your job? And then 3, what is a draft GPT that you can create or find to test to see if you can save yourself time and energy? And that series of activity, as we've embedded in our culture over the last year, has made enormous strides. And again, I think we're only getting started because it is changing the world.
Yeah.
And we will bring you the updated data set for next month on September 12th, Friday in the morning. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Happy selling.